Hello everybody and welcome back to another Bazaar video. We're going to be going over the newest patch notes for the August 13th patch. This is the latest one for Season 5. It is kind of gigantic, so it's definitely going to take us a little bit of time to go through it, so I apologize for that. Before we start, I will note I pretty much only play Dooley, so I won't be able to offer a ton of insight into the other characters, but we'll still go through them, and I'll do my best with those ones, but Dooley's definitely the one I'm going to be able to actually talk about the most in any case. But let's start at the top here. So as you almost all probably already know, the game is going from free to play to a premium model. So if you've already been playing, you still get to play exactly the same as before, but new players will have to pay $40, although it's got like launch discounts. So if you're new and you see this about when it's uploaded, definitely check that out because it's about $20 to get about half price. It's pretty good. And then future heroes you can't get with gems anymore, just with money. I believe this is because effectively the gem economy was so terrible for the game that pretty much every person could very easily get every character for free. So bit of a mess up there, but it is what it is. Hopefully this helps keep the game running. Um, it happens, I guess. I don't have too much to say on it myself. I'm sure you've already all seen tons of other people's opinions. You don't need mine as well. And it's also on Steam, of course. All right, rank mode changes. No longer costs any gems, so you pretty much only need to do it. We only need to, I guess, yeah, you only need to do it if you actually want to play ranked. So if you get like ranked anxiety, feel free to just play unranked instead, because normal mode also awards chests just the same. The only difference is ranked, you get like the little borders and progression over time. That's literally the only difference between the two now. Gems, chest and store changes. So the new chests are going to be just have everything in it instead of like a set of seasonal items, because they're removing the like player market and all that kind of stuff. So you can just sort of collect all of the. Well, we don't actually know if it's all of them or just a bunch of them, but you're going to be able to get a whole bunch of the older cosmetics over time. So if you miss those original ones, you're in luck and you can now get them again. And the shop no longer has unique stuff, but instead is like stuff you haven't acquired yet from like the overall pool of cosmetics. Prize Pass, I don't know what's actually in it anymore, but they're removing subscriptions, and you can no longer skip it. You also no longer have the expansions in it, so I don't know what's in it, but it still exists. I guess it just isn't as important as it was before. And as I mentioned, they're removing the plans for the marketplace. All right, now we're on to the new content. So these are the new expansion packs for your Dooley and Mac. This first one is Propeller Hat, so it's a medium, 8-second cooldown at the start of each fight your cores start flying. When you use a flying item, haste an item for 1, 2, 3 seconds. This is actually a pretty interesting one. If you manage to get some flying set up with Dooley, this basically can give you like full board haste, which is quite powerful, as well as if your cores start flying is pretty good as well, because it gives you a little bit of CC immunity. It is a medium, so it's a little bit hard to just throw in as like a utility item just for this part. So I think it's only going to be super useful if you're making use of the flying item part of the thing, but I don't know why this has a cooldown. Maybe there's like a part of the item I'm not seeing, but here, let me look this up one sec. All right, I asked in the Discord. We'll see if that actually matters. I don't think it has an active effect from what I've seen in the previews. They might have last second changed it, but oh, it looks like someone's saying it's just a typo. All right, cool. So ignore the CD part. It's just a passive item that does these two things. But yeah, I think if you have a flying board, it'll be pretty good. If you don't, it'll be just kind of meh. Like you could throw it on if you need to, but it's not great unless you have multiple flying items, I would say. This is Party Float. It's a cooldown for a friend starts flying. When you use a flying item, shield, your flying items cooldowns are reduced. Again, this is pretty good if you're running the new core, which we'll get to in a moment. It's also got a pretty short cooldown, so you could maybe run it with a friend build. I could see it. I think it would be pretty slow in the current meta, but there's a ton of changes, so it's hard to say. I think it's kind of cool. It's like some nice shielding. You could do something fun with Armadillo, assuming he's unchanged. We'll get to that in a minute. Where like all of your friends are going to start spamming shields whenever you, or like all of your flying items, I guess, but they'll mostly be friends. They'll start spamming shields and they have cooldown reductions. So you could make like a Armadillo build with this. You need something to scale, like sharpen corners or whatever, but very doable. So I think this could be fun with Armadillo, but we'll see. I believe this starts at gold as well, so it might be a little bit hard to find. We shall find out. Radar module, this is a small. When an enemy uses an item, adjacent items gain crit chance for the fight for a 12. This is going to be pretty fun with something like Crit Core, or even if you're running like cybersecurity or anything else, it's like a big item that wants to crit. I think especially early on, and so you can like solve the crit through your like skills or What are those things are? The little amulets that you get from loot items, stuff like that. This could be nice early to mid game to just give you a little bit of extra damage boost on your like big hit items. Even just next with something like a drill or like an early nitro hammer or something along those lines, can make you hit pretty hard. Because it's whenever an enemy uses any item, so you're gonna get like, honestly, even at like, I guess this is silver, gold, diamond. So even at silver, you'll probably get 50% crit rate roughly by the end of the fight. So not too bad for a small. Pterodactyls, this is our big flying payoff item, sorta. So it's a 14 cooldown. This starts or stop flying. When it stops flying, deals 1,200 damage, 2,000 damage. Use a dinosaur or a flying item, charge it 2 seconds. So the main thing with this guy is you're going to want to use him with like a flying setup. And I think he's going to be like a little bit slow end game, but probably like mid game. He's pretty solid because he's doing a lot of damage. And you can probably get him flying pretty easily, I would imagine. Which is like dooley's other items here. Dooley, unfortunately, doesn't have anything to stop flying, so the only thing that's going to stop him is his own cooldown. So after about 14 seconds-ish, you'll do like 1,000 to 2,000 damage, which isn't too bad mid-game. But I think if you're able to steal a stop flying item from Stell, because she's got quite a few of them, so like from her shop, or I don't know, if you just get them from a random event or whatever, or an enemy, I think this guy could be really strong. Because if you're able to start spamming start and stop fly triggers without having to rely on his cooldown, like it's a huge chunk of damage. So I think there's definitely some fun builds you can do with this, but he kind of relies on cross-class items or future stop flying items to really pop off. But I think he'll be like okay, he'll be decent, I would say. Unless there's like a consistent way to get like a full flying board, which I mean it could happen. All right, levitation pad. So this one I've heard is quite good from the playtesters. This is a 4-second cooldown. The item to the left of this is flying. Haste it. The item to the left of this starts flying. So the first trigger, it lifts something off the ground, and every trigger after that, it's haste. So it's kind of like a more targeted cog, which I think is quite good because it gives you some targeted flying, which triggers a lot of other stuff, and it can also give you just the CC resistance on a 4-second cooldown. It's a 4-second tech item. I think it's quite good. I would say this is a nice little utility item. It's not going to be making or breaking any builds, but I think we're going to see a fair bit of it just hanging out. It's just a nice little item. Unstable Gravwell, this is a medium, 876 cooldown. All your items start flying. Destroy this and an enemy item with no cooldown for the fight. So this one's pretty good. So this does let you enable flying, like it does enable you to use flying builds outside of the launch core, which we'll get to in a moment. But the main issue with it, I would say, is it's like a medium item, so you're taking like a big chunk of your board just for this effect here, which again could be worth it, especially if you're running like you could do like it with party float to immediately trigger all of your friends, stuff like that. It could work with pterodactyl, a bunch of smalls, unstable gravwell, and then pterodactyl maybe. I'd have to see the numbers, and it depends on like the overall speed of the game, but it could work. I just think it's a little slow, and it's a little big for what it does, but I think it could be good potentially. It's kind of like a combo item, I would say. And destroying this an enemy item with no cooldown for the fight. This is very like meta dependent. If there's a lot of very strong passives that are floating around, I think this could be quite powerful, but we will have to wait and see. I do think it's a fun item though. I also like the art on it. Chaff, when an adjacent item burns. Shield, when an enemy would destroy your items, this is destroyed instead. This is like some item destroy protection, which is quite nice since Stell has actually a decent amount of item destroy, so you can throw this on the board to help protect yourself. It could be nice to just throw it, use it like a sideboard item, so you swap it in when you're fighting against like a Stell or a dooley, and you can use it just like as an emergency, because it's only a small, you can just swap it in if you need to. And when an adjacent, especially if item destroy builds are quite popular. When adjacent item burns shield, I think this isn't going to be as impactful, but there are quite a few burn items that like shielding now, as we'll get to later. So I think it's going to be okay at that. I think early game it'll be nice. You could run it with like soldering gun. Well, I don't think you could do soldering gun. I'm pretty sure this thing's a tech, so it wouldn't trigger soldering gun, but you run it next to like a burn core or a rocket launcher to get yourself a little bit of early game shielding. It's kind of like duct tape, but with like a little bit of a, it's like more restrictive duct tape, but with the bonus of helping against destroy. So it's niche, but I think it could still be a nice little utility pickup. Launchpad, CD4, an item starts flying. When you use a friend or flying item, burn. So this one's actually pretty interesting. I quite like this because it's It's one of the first dooley items that works really well with ignition, with being on the right side of ignition core. Almost all of our previous ones, you just want it on the left to spam ignition core as fast as possible. But this one, when you scale up the damage on this, it's whenever you use a friend or flying item, and it helps make things fly. So it kind of, using it on the right side of the core also helps the items on the left side of your core scale. So I think this one could be quite powerful. In particular, if like there's any small fast friends, or that ends up being quite good. Or if we end up being able to consistently fly, I think this could be quite powerful with ignition core. Or if there's a way to get easy flat burn outside of ignition core. So yeah, I think this one's pretty good. I quite like Launchpad. I think it's going to be seen at least a reasonable amount because it works like it single-handedly enables flying. It's pretty quick. It works with ignition core. It gives you burn triggers from friends going off, which could be useful for like solar farm or similar. It's got a lot going for it. I think this one's going to be fairly popular as well. All right, hover tech. Cooldown 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Other items start flying. Your flying items have extra crit chance. When you clear with a flying item, it stops flying. So I did say earlier, dooley doesn't have any stop flying. He does technically, but unfortunately with this item, Pterodactyl, the damage is in a passive. So Pterodactyl is unable to crit, so he can't take advantage of hover tech, sadly. However, I do think this could be okay. This one feels like one of those ones where I'd have to try it. Giving everything like up to 100% crit chance is insane on a medium, but it also relies entirely on flying. Like by itself, it's kind of slow for the effect, but if we get a lot of like, if the meta is slow enough that this really works, I could see this being kind of crazy, like mid-game-ish, because it basically doubles the damage of your items if you're able to get it to like gold, for example, because 75 is quite a lot of crit. I mean, it's plus 50% damage, 75, 100% damage, so I think this could be quite strong. Especially if we get a lot of like, if the large flat damage is more popular than like a whole bunch of little plinks that we've been seeing in the previous seasons. But this one's kind of meta dependent, but I think it could be quite good. Also, just having access to a stop flying trigger if we steal like steal items is quite nice. So this one could be good, but it's a little more situational, I think, and it depends on what else ends up being popular. It is very unfortunate that Pterodactyl can't really work with this. I would love it if he could. And then Launcher Core, this kind of enables the whole thing. So this is Launcher Core, it's a medium, so it's a new core, so you can get it from the same selection at level 3. It's not like Combat Core, so it's a 7-6-5 cooldown. 2 other items start flying. Charge your flying items 1 second. Use a friend or flying item, charge this 1. This is clearly intended. It's kind of like an alternative to the friend core if you want to run friend builds, and it also works in flying builds, or even just normal builds because it enables flying by itself. So this one's kind of like the regular charge core, but it's got a slower ramp but gives board wide charge. So I could see this being quite strong if people are able to find some interesting loops to kind of work together with it. So, sorry, excuse me, but so if you can find like some interesting loops where like you charge a bunch of things which instantly recharges the core because they all trigger this effect here, and then the core triggers them again with the charge. So we can make like some charge loops with this. I could see being quite strong. The main issue is it doesn't scale itself, so it's got the same kind of drawback as the regular charge core and friend core. So you have to be a little bit careful about making sure you find some way to scale or some large flat damage to really take advantage of these. Otherwise, you're going to be late game. You're just going to be trying to blink people with like your 10 damage Chris Army knife or whatever, and it's not quite going to be doing what you need it to. All right, so here's all the Mac items. I am not a Mac expert, so we're going to just skim through these. I'm not going to give too much insight here. So we got a flying potion. He's got a little potion that's going to give your items flying. He's got Sky Spirit Ashes, so it's just a large item that at the start of each fight enchants other items, and when it's transformed, enchant this. So he's kind of like a large reagent, essentially, which is kind of interesting. He hasn't had access to these before. It seems a little scary, but at the same time, it's a large item, so you can't change it, or you can't transform it with catalysts. He's got to rely on Mandala, so I think it probably won't be that terrifying, but it could end up being stronger than I think. Frozen Horror, this item is horrifying. So this is a medium, 2 ammo, 3 second, freeze 2 to 3 items for 1 second. Already insanely good. When it runs out of ammo, poison both players, and when it's transformed, enchant with Icy. So I think this is going to be a standout item from this patch. It does start at gold, as far as I remember, but this one, from an outside perspective of Max, seems very good. It's got a lot of freeze effects, and when it runs out, it's got the poison both players effect, which I think, if you reload it, it doesn't destroy itself, so if you reload it, it probably reapplies this effect. So you could run this as like a kind of delay and then build up poison with the self-poison builds. And then just free icy enchants on mediums is always kind of crazy. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot of this item, or at least way more icy on Mac boards. Pretty scary, pretty scary. Atmospheric Sampler, when you use an enchanted or flying item, charge another enchanted or flying item. At the start of each fight, another item starts flying. At the start of each day, get a small reagent. This seems like a very good, like, charge loopy kind of spammy board. I don't know if they'll be popular on Mac, but if he does end up having kind of like a mass flying with a bunch of smalls sort of a thing, I can definitely see this making it go kind of nuts. You could do like kind of a similar board to what he runs with Poppy Field now. You need some other sorts of scaling, I'm sure, but you could make them all like spam charge each other back and forth, and I feel like it could go a little nuts. And then this as well to get a small reagent. You got a lot of new reagents in this expansion, so it can give you access to some of the scarier ones as well, because you can level up Sampler to like, I think it starts at gold, so gold and diamond, and you can get like really powerful reagents potentially from it. Gravstone, it's just when you use a flying item, get regen. When you use another potion, an item starts flying. So like, again, you could do like a potion flying build with Atmospheric Sampler. Could be kind of interesting. Again, I'm not a Mac expert. Just sounds kind of cool. Ionized Lightning. Choose an item so extra crit chance when it's transformed into enchant with Deadly. So it's kind of like a crit reagent. Distilled Sunlight. This is kind of a scary one. So this is a cooldown reduction, and it enchants with Shiny. Now, Mac doesn't have any like super insane smalls with Shiny as far as I know, but potentially in the future this could be a problem if he ends up with something that like really pops off when it does multicast. But I don't think it's totally insane yet, but I do think you're definitely be seeing a lot more Macs with Shiny smalls, that's for sure. Another one here, this is like a little haste reagent that gives turbo, and not too much to say about that. This one's a little passive bird. When you crit, an item starts flying. Your flying items have extra crit chance. They actually changed flying was it Magic Carpet? Not Flying Carpet, Magic Carpet. They changed Magic Carpet to have flying, so I think this little bird here, Orly, will have a pretty good synergy with Magic Carpet builds, potentially. So we'll have to see how that works out. But I could see there being like a crit flying sort of hybrid build, something like that, with this guy helping to enable it. Seems pretty interesting. Sky Terror, this one's pretty scary. This is like he's like a big dragon, 3.5 second cooldown. This is like one of the first times we've seen fractional cooldowns on an item by default. I think some of them did it when upgrading. No, actually, I don't know. I think this might be the first one. But it starts or stops itself from flying, and it kind of alternates between doing damage and burn, and it scales the other one whenever it starts or stops flying, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like toggling between these two modes and scaling the opposite one at the same time. So I feel like this guy could get pretty scary pretty fast, but he's also a large gold, so he's expensive, and you're not going to see him until a little bit later in the game. I do think this one could be fun. I'm not sure how to synergize with that on Mac, because he doesn't do great with like he's just got like burn and flat damage scaling, but I don't think he's got anything that really synergizes super well with that. However, it is a dragon, so you can use it with that dragon potion that you previously had 0 support. So I could see this being good, but again, I don't know enough about Mac to really say, but it's a cool item in any case. I like the design. New encounters. I can't say too much about these because we don't know how often they are or what's in them necessarily, but Arrow, it's a stealth encounter, sells vehicle. Nothing crazy. I think he's like that bird guy. Yeah, he used to be on Vanessa like way back in closed beta. Pinfeather, stealth only, sells flying items. Excavation, new encounter, get a relic from any hero. This one could be pretty fun. There's a lot of really strong relics, and it's not even size restricted. So depending on how often this shows up, you could get some crazy stuff out of it. Get a reagent, Mac only. Reasonable. Get a truffle, pig only. This seems a little weak from what I know, but maybe if value builds kind of come back into fashion, this could be good. Dino trapping, dooley only. So this one's kind of crazy. So get a dino. So this makes dino builds way more consistent depending on how frequently it shows up, because there aren't that many dinos for dooley. So if you're running like Primal Core and you've already got like Dinosaur or whatever, you can use this to maybe get like one of the scaling dinos or an extra Dinosaur or something like that. So if this is like a silver or even a gold encounter, I think this could be quite good for making Dino Dooley a little bit more consistent to run. And then family reunion with Stell. Your Stell sister shows up to get her to come home. I think this is similar to Vanessa's unique event where she fights like the bounty hunters. So I think we'll see that in a second here. I did not see it, but I believe that's what that is. I think. It's just like a unique encounter that Stell gets to run into. Bunch of new monsters. We don't have the items for these, so I can't really comment on them. But we got day 3, day 5, 8, 9, and then a bunch of 10s. Day 10 monsters are very nice because it was pretty stale before, where you would only ever see like exactly the same monsters all the time. That said, these ones are kind of interesting because they're items. They're like existing items, and you'll see them on the board, obviously. So there's like a Tortuga one, Alpha, Rex Specs, Dualtron, and Awakened Primordial. Presumably, they'll all be on the boards because at least from the ones we've seen, they are. So that gives you more access cross-class to these particular items. Tortuga could be good on Dooley, although I think it got changed. Dualtron could be interesting on other characters. Lots of stuff you can do with this. I think it's a. I'm always happy to see more monsters added to the game. All right, now for some of the big changes. So this is start of run. Day 1, hour 1 is a normal hour, no longer offering special choices. So this basically means there's no longer income, skill, and enchanted start. Instead, everybody's basically forced into enchanted, or not enchanted. Everybody's forced into income start. I've heard from playtesters this is much better than it sounds, but personally, I don't like it. I very much liked my gold skill start. It's definitely going to change how a lot of characters are played. In particular, on Dooley, there was a lot of there's a lot of items that kind of very heavily relied on early skills to be even usable, like rocket launcher. So with gold skill removed, it it might make it so that a lot of early game items are they don't have enough flat damage, but we'll see how it goes. I don't hate it. This is definitely one of those ones where I just feel like, well, we got to wait and see. We got to play it to see how it feels. Freeze and slow reduction. This basically just means they've added the potential mechanic in the future for you to have freeze reduction on your items. So you could say like, oh, this item has 50% freeze reduction or slow reduction, whatever. So it just gives them more options in the future. We'll see once we get to the items below if that's actually something they've added yet other than through fly. And then similarly, you can get destroy immunity as well outside of Radiant. Radiant and some other similar effects have been updated to use the reduction above. Some like so this is just like, it's kind of just like an internal thing. Radiant still works the same, but it uses this instead of how it worked before. It is worth noting that items with full reduction reduce the duration to 0, but can still be targeted. So this means if you're running like a one weapon Vanessa build and you have immunity to like slow, and you come against a slow build, they'll still hit you with slow. It won't affect you, but it'll still trigger their items. So it makes it so your build doesn't just completely brick against somebody who's immune to that particular effect, which I think is fair. It did make it kind of obnoxious when you just ran into somebody who completely countered your entire thing and your board just did nothing. So I think we'll have to see. I think they could do some fun creative stuff with this, but we'll just have to see what happens. Flying new mechanics. This is Stell's mechanic. We already talked about some items that get it before, but it's basically just a 50% slow and freeze reduction, which is pretty good. Even by itself, it just helps you, especially with the amount of slow items that are getting added, as well as the meta previously. It really helps you not feel like you're getting completely crushed whenever you get slowed. So I think that's pretty reasonable. No, it's not to the effects, it's the duration. So if somebody's still doing like really high duration slow spam, they can still get you, but it'll at least help with like the smaller like, Clamora style round start plinks and stuff like that. All right, this one is another one that's like, we'll have to see it to see what happens. This is enchantments. They've kind of, they've reworked a ton of enchantments. It says they said they did the enchantment pass to kind of go through every item and rework a ton of them, because a ton of them were like completely busted. Like Dualtron had like a 15-second freeze or something stupid like that. But so they went through all the enchantments and double checked them, and they've all been reworked. Again, I can't say this without like seeing how Bazaar or Bazaar DB or whatever, because they don't actually list them below, but that means every item might have been tweaked a bit. So when you're playing, just make sure you double check before you enchant things how it actually works now. Updated burn, so ticks before regen when they both would occur on the same frame. This makes it so it's a little bit easier for burn builds to kill regen builds. I thought this was how it worked already, but I guess I was wrong. But it basically means like if you tick for half their health and then tick for the other half, it'll go off before the regen ticks, which will let you kill them immediately. So a little bit scary for regen people, nice for burn people. We'll have to see how it plays out though. Encounter changes, so Haunted Kimonos. This was the day 1 monster with Silk. Haunted Flight, the first time you use an item each flight, 1, 2, 3 items start flying. This seems quite nice. Even if you're not running a flying build, just having some crowd control resistance is pretty good. This definitely makes Haunted Kimono a much more reasonable encounter. All the other ones kind of outmatched it previously, unless you really wanted Silk, because like they all have pretty good skills that kind of help them compete. whereas Hantakemono had just silk. So definitely makes it a more tempting encounter if you want flying, especially on like Stell. I think people are going to be taking this one a lot. C4, so this was the ammo guy. It no longer spawns on Mac, I guess because like you didn't really have that many ammo items um, outside of potions, so I guess that's reasonable. I don't know myself though. Correct an issue where the rate of regen dropping was much lower than intended. I had no idea that was the thing. Again, this doesn't show up on dooley, so what do I know? Mandala no longer spawns on day 2 and 3. This changes things a little bit, so you can no longer do the thing where you'd get like an early bronze large from Curio, and then Mandala it and end up with like a large silver or even gold item. So that does help with that a little bit. It does make it a little bit more annoying to transform the loot drops you get from certain monsters. So if you get like a gold scrap from, what's that guy's name? I don't know, the little robot dude on day 2. It means that you can't transform it into like day 4, but I don't think it's a huge deal, but it's just something to keep in mind. I don't know what the gunner skill is, but it's just a minor change to Harkuvian Rocket Trooper. All right, so there's going to be a ton of items. There's like a billion of changes here. I'm going to start with dooley because he is the one I know the most. But give me 1 second, then we'll start that. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, I had to rest my voice a bit there. I was already talking for 20 minutes, and we're not even at the items. All right, so let's start with dooley items. So it's a little bit of a buffed Alpha Ray. It's a little bit more scaling. That's quite nice. Especially since they've nerfed a couple of the skills that you would normally use for scaling, things like Crit Core, although Crit Core also got nerfed. It's kind of nice. Alpha Ray wasn't amazing, and you definitely never used it late game. Well, if you could help it, so... a buff to it is always nice. I don't know if it'll be crazy or anything, but it's definitely a little bit more viable to run, that's for sure. And it helps give you more scaling for like launch core and the core and things of that sort. Angry Balloon Blot has his cooldown reduced. That's pretty good. I did feel like he was pretty slow before, so this definitely helps Armored Core be a little bit more viable because now you've got like 2, maybe 3 particularly useful shield payoffs. We'll see some more of them later as well. Because 7 seconds isn't too bad, whereas like 10 was pretty brutal. He basically only went off once per fight. But 7, he'll usually go off 2, maybe 3, depending if he's haste or not. So, nice buff for Balloon Bot. I don't think it'll make him like crazy broken or anything, but he'll definitely be better than he was. So Atomic Clock has been moved back to silver, and it now has similar ammo to what it had before, but it only increases cooldowns by 1 second instead of 1 to 2. I think the main thing you'll be using Atomic Clock for now is the 1 second cooldown on it to help trigger things like cores. The 1 second cooldown reduction on the enemies, or increase on the enemies rather, is not as, like, I never found it to be as impactful as when you got it to like 2 or 3 in past iterations of this item. But it's just like a nice little bonus, especially if you're able to get more ammo included on this thing through things like gunpowder, stuff like that. So definitely better than it was, more usable, but I think you're mainly going to be using it for the fast item rather than the cooldown effect. Balloonbot, a small item, starts flying when used, so he still has the same effect as before. So like every 2 seconds, he goes off if you have shield, and he also starts things flying. So he'll be nice for if flying builds are particularly viable on dooley, or even if you just want to run them and get a little bit of extra cooldown reduction on your small items. Not too bad, nice little buff. Again, I don't think it'll make him insane or anything though. Barbed Wire is now at bronze, increased cooldown, damage has been increased, slows an item, and when you shield, charge this 1 second. So it's been changed from like a shield scaler, which was horrible for the record. I don't think anybody's ever used it, at least not effectively. I've tried it, but it's not good. But it does a little bit more damage and slow, and it's a little charge item. So it's now like a little bit of a slow payoff with a little bit of damage. It's kind of like grappling hook, but also charges from shield. So a nice little bonus to shield builds. It's nice to have a little bit, some extra payoffs for it. And starting at bronze isn't too bad. Even without shield, it's not horrible, but you definitely want to run shield with it to make it a little bit more viable. So Ballista, so this is kind of like a universal change that they've been making this patch, is a ton of like the payoff items have been moved to gold and then buffed or reworked to kind of help them in their new spot. So Ballista is one of those. So Ballista now starts at gold. She's had her cooldown reduced a little bit. They've increased her scaling at diamond a little bit. She wasn't crazy before, but depending on how fast the meta is, she could be okay now. So I assume, I can't see it here, but I assume she still has her charge passive from like when you haste her charger. I don't think she's going to be insane, but it definitely makes her a little bit more viable. A little bit more viable than she was before with the cooldown reduction and the little bit of extra damage. Beta Ray, this is a nerf, unfortunately, but you can see it more consistently. So this is the freeze ray. Freeze an item for 1.52 seconds instead of freezing multiple. The two item freeze was what made this really pop off when you got up to diamond, especially with like a really fast core. I don't think this is going to be crazy unless we can get like ray builds really popping off again, but I don't think it's like horrible or anything. It's just a nice little freeze item that you can throw in mid game if you don't have other slots. It's not a tech, so it doesn't interfere with anything, although we'll get to crude tools later. Um, yeah, it's just kind of, it's just a okay utility item now. I don't think it's anything too insane though. Bulldozer. I don't remember what his base damage was before, but it doesn't really matter because he scales. He's at gold now. Use another friend. He gets better scaling than he had before, and he's got pretty much the same cooldown reduction. Unfortunately, I don't think he's great. Still, we'll have to see because the scaling wasn't really what you took him for originally. It was definitely the cooldown reduction, and the loss of the cooldown reduction in his previous patch made him really hard to fit onto friend boards because he's huge, and having him on there just for like 10% or 20 isn't really quite enough to make him pop off. But I would love to be wrong because I love little friend builds, but I do think he's probably not going to be as crazy as some of the other options you could run in friend builds, but it's definitely an improvement at the very least. So the spider corrected an issue where charges from different triggers did not obey the internal cooldown. We'll get into this more later. Well, I'll explain it now, but we'll see other items with it later. But when you had items that had multiple charge conditions, so for example, drill or dualtron or the bugs, it used to be there was an internal cooldown on how often you could charge something, but it only went off every where it was like every like 0.2 seconds you could charge something. But if you had multiple, each of them had their own cooldown, so you could kind of bypass it overall. This is what you could use to make drill go insanely fast. And as you can see, they removed it, which is kind of a huge nerf to all of these items. We'll have to see what the change is, but I think they might need to buff some of these items to really make them function after this, because they were sort of balanced around the existence of this quote-unquote bug. Yeah, we'll have to see how that goes. Just a note. I assume it happens for all characters, although Dooley was the main one that took advantage of this particular bug or exploiter feature, whatever you want to call it. All right, Bomb Squad. he finally got his cooldown reduced from 11 seconds, which was horrifying, down to 9. So he's a little bit more viable as like his own item now. They did nerf him at I don't think it was 5. I think it was, oh no, it was 5. It was 4 briefly, and then they put him to 5. So they nerfed him at Diamond, buffed him at the earlier tiers, which is nice. He was pretty useless early outside of like a haste trigger, because 11 seconds is completely brutal. So he's a little bit more viable early, which is nice. I don't think he's game-changing or anything, though. Brick Buddy, they lowered his scaling early on, which, fair. He was very, very strong early in the game, so makes him a little bit less oppressive if you get him super early with some good friends. Capacitor, now at Bronze, has like actual reasonable cooldown now. This item actually could be good now. It charges adjacent items. So I could see it being run, because like a 4 or 3 second tech item that charges adjacent stuff is honestly pretty solid, rather than like 6 or whatever it was before. So I could see Capacitor getting more use, especially if tech builds are back in the meta. All right, Charcoal starts at Bronze. He got a little bit of a buff to his burn. When you use another friend, they basically just extended his previous stuff to Bronze. I don't think he's amazing, but him showing up at Bronze is totally reasonable. He could be nice in the early days if you get some extra friend setups. That makes him easier to find, which also makes friend builds more consistent, because in the mid-game, Charcoal was honestly not horrible. He was fairly solid, so I think he'll be a nice early to mid-game guy, because having scaling early on is quite strong because of how slow the fights are. Clarence, also Bronze. Similarly, they just kind of extended him. Well, they nerfed him mid-game compared to what he was before, but at Diamond, he's in the same spot, so another early game buff to friends. I definitely think that early friends could be a lot more popular now. Just as kind of like a generic, you throw like a Brick Buddy, a Clarence, and maybe like an Aiden or something on the board, and you got yourself like an early game kind of setup while you wait for your more late game items. So definitely a nice change here. We'll see if he is too powerful. He's probably going to be pretty good early. Just, having scaling is quite nice, and you can set off friends pretty easily. So nice buff to Clarence. We'll definitely be seeing him a little bit more than we used to. Chem Snail, now silver starting, but he gets a lot more poison. And when you slow, charge this 1 second. So now we have another slow payoff. Very nice. So it's a slow poison synergy. This is very similar to what he used to be back in the Charge Mageddon. So he, however, the charge doesn't scale, and I think he'll still be 5 seconds, I think. But yeah, you can run him with like the Black Spider, and then similar like what's that thing called? Plasma grenades, stuff like that. So Chem Snail is a payoff, pretty nice. I think Poison Dooley could be a lot more viable than it used to be now that we have like an extra way to play it that actually charges. So definitely a very nice change. I think we're gonna be seeing some more Chem Snail in the future. I don't know if he'll be great late game. 30 poison is a lot, but it depends how fast you can get him charged with slow and what sort of synergistic stuff you've got. Combat Core, move to gold, similar to the other payoff items. Starting damage and shield change to 50, and then they gave him a little bit of a buff to the scaling. They didn't touch the cooldown, so I think this isn't going to be amazing, but it's at least a little bit better than it used to be. That said, you can't do the fun trick with it anymore where you'd use it to upgrade your existing cores, which is a bit of a sad loss, but potentially it's good. I'm not sure it'll be good enough, because usually the issue with Combat Core wasn't the scaling on it, but it was just like how slow it is, honestly. And with fewer ways to lower the cooldown on this now, as we'll see in a minute, I still think Combat Core is not going to be amazing. I think it'll be fine, but nothing crazy, I think. Cool LEDs has been changed from slow multiple items to from slow n item to slow multiple items. This is quite nice. You can use it with something like Chem Snail or similar. This is a very nice change for Dooley in general. Just Dooley generally much prefers multi-targets over single target with higher duration, so nice change of cool LEDs. We'll see if it's more viable. It was definitely quite slow before. It might still be too slow, but the multi-target definitely makes it a lot more viable for sure. All right, so now we're on to Cooling Fans. Cooling Fan has been completely reworked. So it starts at gold, has a 3-second CD, which is very fast. Freeze adjacent items for 1 or 0.5 seconds and cleanse half your burn. This seems bad at first, but freezing adjacent items is actually pretty good. It gives you 2 freeze procs for something like Shatter or Nitrogen Hammer or even like your freeze, not your freeze, your Wasp or Ice 9K, as we'll get to soon. So it's basically just here to give you extra freeze procs, and it's a very fast tech item at the same time. So I think that I think this has a lot of potential. It's a very nice, like, kind of more niche utility item. And if you need to, you can like freeze passive items, so like a fiber optics or something, to just ignore this part and just have a fast 3-second item that cleanses burn. Yeah, even like this part, I think is quite good. So I think this item is going to be pretty solid, especially if burn items or burn builds are popular, because a 3-second cleanse half your burn is quite powerful. And then the freeze procs could potentially be good if you get like Shatter or something similar. So definitely got potential. I think this Cooling Fan is a lot more viable than the previous option, at least, even if it's a little bit unusual. So Crit Core, unfortunately, Crit Core got bonked pretty hard by this internal cooldown change. Because it used to be with Crit Core, if you use an item to the left of it, it would charge at 1, and if that item crit, it would like instantly charge 2 instead of following the internal cooldown, which let you spam Crit Core insanely quickly. Unfortunately, they fixed this, so Crit Core is going to be a lot slower than it used to be. I think it'll still be a little bit viable, and they gave it a cooldown buff to compensate a little bit, but that did hit Crit Core pretty hard, but I'll have to play it out to see how it feels. Also, this is going to be an insanely long video. I apologize. All right, crew tools. Starting tier change from silver to bronze. It was bronze. So I assume this means from bronze to silver. Yeah, because it's 3. So this means bronze to silver. So you only find it at bronze now. From bronze. I see. From silver from bronze. Okay. Well, it's silver now. Anyway. So now it has a slightly longer cooldown, and then charges all of your tech items instead of just one of them. And this item's cooldown is reduced by 3 seconds if you have only one tech item. So no longer can you duplicate crude tools to set your core to 1 cooldown. As funny as it was definitely a little bit of an oppressive build, especially considering you could do it with non-cores as well. But I think it's still going to be viable. It's kind of got 2 modes now, so you can use it with just your core or just 1 tech item, and it'll be basically like a double charge because it charges them 1 and it counts as, you know, an item being used. Or you can play it with like a tech build. It has a longer cooldown, but it's like a global charge. So I'll have to play it out to see how this goes, but I think this is a nice change. It was definitely too strong as it was before, and this doesn't completely kill it and kind of gives you more modes of play with it, which I think is quite nice. So it's definitely a welcome change, even if I'm a little sad that it got nerfed. All right, cybersecurity. The gist of this one is he does more damage at diamonds, but he no longer multiplies damage quite as much. So it used to be you could put like right-handed on this guy, and it would give him like an extra 300 or 500 damage or something insane. But now he has more base damage, but he doesn't scale as much from external sources of damage. I think this is an overall nerf because you kind of relied on those external buffs a lot to really make him pop off. And he was already struggling a bit, but we'll have to see. Again, I don't know the new meta, but overall, I think he's not as good. He also starts at gold, so he's a little bit less likely to show up, but I think he's still fine. But the health increases that we got a few patches ago in the late game make him a little bit... He can't, like, one-shot people as easily anymore. I'm sure there's, like, a build you could do to make him work. I'll definitely try that, but I don't think he's going to be crazy or anything. Defense Matrix. This is an old fuel rod, so it's been changed to 4 seconds. Haste adjacent items. When you use adjacent item shield. It's just a... It's interesting. They nerfed the haste. Well, I guess they gave him a lower cooldown, so... it's okay. I still don't see it being, like, super... used super often because it's like a medium item and it's kind of hard to fit it on a lot of boards, but it's a decent like mid-game utility kind of thing. Gives you a bit of shield, gives you a bit of haste. It just doesn't do anything. It's not like the best at anything, so you don't want it on a lot of endgame boards, but I think like early to mid, it's fine. It's okay. It just takes up a lot of room, which dooley doesn't have a ton of room, but it's okay. Dooley Scarf. This adjacent items are immune to freeze. This is like old Scarf. What used to happen was if you would get frozen for like a fraction of a second and then it would remove it. But if you spammed enough freeze, it would actually overload the scarf and you could actually freeze things through it. It only happened during that one patch where freeze mac was insane, but it's at least nice they fixed that issue. So good to see. Dualtron also lost his supercharging. I think this is going to make Dualtron way worse than he used to be. We'll have to see. I'm kind of sad about him. He didn't get any like buffs to compensate, and he was already kind of borderline being able to be used. But I'm happy to be wrong. I think he'll still be really good if you can get a good board set up for him. So something like mainframe, etc. But yeah, his internal cooldowny stuff, he's going to be a little bit slower to trigger. So if you trigger like pylon plus pulse grenade or plasma grenade, don't expect him to just instantly fire like he used to. He's definitely going to take probably like an extra half a second to a second to fire, which could make a big difference depending on how fast the game is. Duct tape has been moved to bronze. It works the same. They just adjusted it's a little bit more shielding, a little bit more slow, and now it's bronze. That's nice. I would say that it's good for gold skill starts in case you get shield, but you know, that's gone. It's at the very least, it's nice for armored core, armadillo, etc. So nice little utility item. Glad it's back at bronze. It definitely is nice to have decent dooley bronzes once more. Flamethrower now goes off its gold tier again, and it starts at 5, or it goes down to 5 seconds, which is pretty nice. Unfortunately, it still doesn't have its doubling effect that it used to have, so I don't think it's going to be insane, but if you get enough flat damage on this thing, it'll definitely go crazy going off at like under 5 seconds if you can haste it. So I could see this being good, but depends how much flat damage we can get access to. All right, give me 1 sec. I gotta rest my voice. I've talked for 20 minutes and we're through half the items. All right, I'm back. I think I might have to skip Vanessa and Pig because my goodness. My voice is getting tired, and I'm only like part way through, but we'll keep going. We'll at least go through the dooley stuff. Forklift, you would flamethrower fiber optics. This one's actually pretty good. So you can put you can put radiant on your fiber optics to give your rightmost item radiant and still have an enchant slot on it. So this is actually really cool. Sorry about that, got a bit interrupted. So this is actually really cool. This gives you access to like it lets you use radiant and not feel as bad about it if you have fiber on your board, because it lets you like make your core itself immune, and you can still give it like a damage increasing enchant. So that's actually pretty cool. I really like this change. Forklift changed to gold tier. When using adjacent item, charge it. Pretty much the same as before. If you have another, and then they buffed the damage on it. I think it's fine. Forklift wasn't super popular before, but at least it won't be clogging up your early shops anymore. I think it might need a little bit more of a buff, either on the charging or the damage end, to really be viable as like a gold tier payoff, but I think it's fine. I don't think it's amazing, but I think it's fine. I don't mind the design of this item still. I mean, we still have trouble getting apparel on dooley, but it's fine. It's okay. Granola bars has been completely reworked. So this is a food now, and when you sell it, you gain, it's like a chocolate bar, but when you sell a tool or tech, you get more scaling on the max health you get. So It's kind of got a mini game to it where you pick up the granola bar early, you kind of hold on to it in your inventory, and you sort of decide when to sell it to get the HP payoff. I'm like, do you want it now or do you want to save it more for later? This is going to be much more impactful early game, so I would highly recommend you sell it kind of like maybe day like 3, 4, 5, maybe day 6. Because as you get later in the game, this amount of max HP isn't as impactful. But yeah, early on, if you can, get like a silver one of these, you get this up to like an extra 100 HP. That could be pretty strong. But yeah, late game it's not going to matter too much. But it's a fun redesign. I like it. Same effect on the wasps. At the same cooldown thing. Hacksaw. This one's really fun. I quite like this. So they give it a weirdly they nerfed the cooldown on it a bit, but the damage is increased and transform an enemy item into 2 small items for the fight. So you literally cut it in half. Hilarious. I don't know if it still has like the destroy passive or anything like that, but I love the flavor on this. It's very funny. I don't know if it'll be good. Probably not. It's like a full item slot just to like break one medium enemy item, but is what it is. It's funny at the very least. Hydraulic press, it's the same item, now just starts at gold. It's going to be a little bit harder to make hydraulic press work from gold because you kind of need to like build up the types over time. And if you're starting at gold, you have way fewer chances to do fights to squish things. So hydraulic press might be much harder to make work now. I think they might need to maybe adjust how often you're able to squish stuff. Like maybe make it when you go to a shop, it squishes them, or maybe like every hour. That might be a bit much. But yeah, if it's at gold, I think it might be hard to put the number of tags on it that you need to. But I'm happy to be wrong. It still works exactly the same. It has a slight damage. Nope, it's actually nerf damage. Okay. I think it's gonna struggle a little bit, hydraulic press, because late game it was already running into the issue where you weren't one-shotting people. But we'll see. I think this might be a bit of an unfortunate change for a good pal press. Ice Knight K now to gold. Lower cooldown. Now freezes fewer items, and when you freeze, it gains a ton of poison compared to the fewer amount before. So this is kind of like another freeze payoff that you can potentially use. So for like cooling fan, etc. I think this could be fun. Again, poison's pretty slow, especially with a 6-second cooldown. I don't know how viable this guy will be. He's definitely more than before. That is absolutely for sure. But I don't know if he'll be crazy or anything, but he's at least something that'll be fun to play around with. I just think poison is kind of slow, especially when it needs to be triggered by this guy hitting you. So we'll see. It'll be fun to play around with it in any case, but I'm not sold on him being like a meta build or anything like that, especially given how little freeze dooley has general access to, especially multi-target freeze now. Induction Age is slight buff. The end of the world. It's actually been buffed. I think it's still bad. You can throw it on your board, I guess, and it does a little bit, but it's not a great item, in my opinion. Kinetic Cannon starts at gold, got a little bit of a buff at diamond. This is unfortunate for mid-game, because this was a nice item to sometimes just throw on your board mid-game to make your core kind of spam. It basically doubled the usages of your small items. So if you only had like one Uzi and like a Fang or something, and then like a bunch of crap, you could throw this guy on to double the uses of your Uzi and Fang, essentially. So it makes it a little bit more viable as like an endgame thing, but I think it's too slow to really work as that. So we'll have to see. I feel like this one could use a little bit of adjustments, because again, the damage wasn't the issue with this guy. It was how fast you're able to fire it before you get killed, but that is, of course, meta dependent. If the game's much slower, I think this will be totally fine, but we'll see. Laser Pistol got a little bit of a buff. That's nice, because it sucked. It still kind of sucks. It's just like an okay little pew-pew early game item. Nothing crazy. Lens starts at silver now. We don't have the numbers for this, so I can't really comment on it, but it's the one that's like when you haste this, charge it, and it charges stuff to the right of it. Could be viable, but again, we don't have the numbers, so I can't comment too much. Memory card, this one's very sad. So recently people have been using a lot of memory card farming to get a ton of plus damage on crit core, but now it's only crit chance. This does make it more useful in a wider variety of cores, because crit chance is usable with like most of them, whereas damage is only usable on a couple. It is a little sad. I think it'll probably need to get some buffs, because it's not as... we'll see. It's hard for me to evaluate this one, because crit chance does go really crazy with, for example, burn core. So I could see this being like something you pick up if you've got like an ignition core and you've got time to farm it up, because crit chance does go pretty crazy with it. But yeah, it's definitely not as good with crit core anymore, but it's fine. All right, Monitor Lizard. This one's pretty fun. So starts at gold, 4-second cooldown, haste itself for 1 second when it goes off. when this is hasted poison. So it's kind of like a twist on his original design, or like his busted design. So it's only when this is hasted, not when you haste, because that would kind of go insane. Um, there's a lot of ways that you can do like targeted haste on Dooley. So I could see this going pretty hard. We'll have to see. I do think this is quite strong, but he is gold tier, so it can be kind of hard to find. But if you get like a really fast companion core, it's spamming this. If you could get like a metronome to hit him, it's spamming. So I do think this will make poison quite good now potentially. And you can also scale this little guy up with your gamma ray, which also makes gamma ray a lot better than it used to be as well. So good change. We'll see if it's broken. I don't think it's broken with the "this is hasted" wording, but we'll have to see. I think it's probably pretty good, but nothing like insane. I think he's going to be solid though. Motherboard is now when you use a tech item instead of adjacent. I think that's quite strong. In any sort of tech-focused build, this now gives you a decent amount of haste, and it also is now a self-triggering tech item. Or not self-trigger. Well, it is self-trigger, actually, yeah, when you use a tech item. So it charges itself as well, which is usually a bad plan. So I could see this going pretty hard. I think it's going to be a really nice utility item for any sort of tech build, assuming that those are viable. Nitrogen Hammer. I am pretty sad about this one. So it starts at gold now. Cooldown's reduced, but when you freeze, it doesn't charge, which I think that kind of kills the item personally. He's still like okay, but the charge is what really made this thing pop off before, because you could do like a cryosphere and then it would instantly go off. You could do like a bunch of self-freezing, which makes it spam. I think it's too slow, even though it does get a lot of damage. I personally think it's too slow at 6-7 seconds if it doesn't charge, but I'm happy to be proven wrong. But I played when it didn't charge before and it wasn't very good, so we'll see. I think it's okay. It's very similar to like Freeze Claw Mac, but nobody uses Freeze Claw Mac, so we'll see. All right, Plasminade starts at silver. So Plasminade's been nerfed a little bit. It's going to be harder to find. So it does make like the snail kind of synergy we talked about earlier a little bit less viable. It's probably fair given how strong this item was, but it definitely makes slow synergies a little bit harder to pop off with Dooley, especially early game. Plasma Rifle, this one's actually kind of insane. Oh, sorry, not Plasma. I'm thinking of Pulse. We'll get there. All right, Plasma is now gold tier, lower cooldown, and it gains... Okay, so they removed the charge from it again. I think that seems to be what this implies. So they removed the charge from Plasma Rifle. I assume they're trying to slow the game down, but we'll see how much that works. If they've successfully slowed the game down, I think that both of these could be perfectly fine as like sort of a big finisher for freeze or burn builds. But if it's not too slow, this missing charge is going to be quite an issue for these two items. I think they'd be too slow, personally. But happy to be wrong. Again, it depends how fast the meta is. All right, so we're on to Power Drill. So they did lower the cooldown on it to sort of at least a diamond to sort of compensate for this part. But this part was a really important piece of drill. So I think it's still usable like early to mid, but I still don't think we're going to be seeing the sort of drill builds that we used to see, where you could like use it and completely remove your core and just make a bunch of triggers to spam it. I think it's not going to be quite at that level. It's still good mid early, but losing this internal cooldown kind of exploity thing definitely hurts this item quite a lot. Power standard buff, quite nice. At 6 seconds it was kind of meh. 5 seconds is a lot nicer because then you can help trigger. You can use the haste to help things start faster. So quite nice. Power standard is a nice little utility item. Power carbon completely reworked. When you burn, shield, and haste an item for 1 second. This is actually not bad for burn builds. It's worse than it was before in terms of like full board haste, but it's also more generically useful. It's more you're not going to be just like, if you're missing pyro or if you're missing nitro, you're not just going to auto skip pyrocarbon anymore. I think it's going to be fairly nice in burn builds because like when you gain, that's not correct, but it's when you burn, shield and hasten the item for 1 second. So I think it's quite good. I think it's quite. I believe this is supposed to be when you burn, not when you gain burn. The patch notes are a little bit got a few typos, but I believe they said they'd fix them. So hopefully by the time you're reading them yourself, it'll be a little bit more accurate. Right. Primal Core got a little bit of a buff. That's nice. Primal Core was among the weakest cores in the previous season, so it's nice to see them getting a little bit of a buff, especially given you can now find the free Dino node. I think Primal Core could be a lot more viable than it used to be for sure. Pulse Rifle, now it goes insane. So it now scales its cooldown with tier. The damage doesn't matter, but the cooldown with tier is the most important part. So now at Diamond, it's a 3-second, 3 multicast item, which is like a 1-second item essentially. So if you can get Pulse Rifle charged up, and you know it still costs having a friend next to it, still the same effects, but this definitely makes Pulse Rifle way more appealing later in the game because it kind of fell off a lot in its previous iterations. So very, very nice. Not as dominant early, but can go crazy late as just sort of an engine for like a core or something else that triggers off techs, etc. So very, very nice. Race Carl has a much lower cooldown now if you get him upgraded, which is very nice. You can use this with like Flashy Pilot to help your whole board if you get like haste spam. Race Car was already pretty solid, so this is a very nice buff for him. Expect to be seeing him up quite a bit more, I would say. Very good item. Railgun starts at gold, cooldown changed. So the cooldown's now 1210, and it's got 300, 600 damage. It's a little bit of a buff at diamond. It still has the same effect with tech, and as we've now seen, there's quite a few buff tech items. So I think late game you could do like a railgun with pulse rifle now. You could have a motherboard in there. I do think railguns will be a little bit more viable now with the pulse rifle and motherboard buffs. I don't know if it'll be as dominant as before. Almost certainly not, given it starts at gold, but I think it's a cool option now with like pulse rifle and the similarly buff techs. I think it's more viable now for sure. Remote control, use all of your cores from use a core. This is a crazy change. Kinda, not really. It buffs combat core mainly because you can run a core with your combat core, have your remote control trigger both of them. That's about it. That's the main thing it's used for. So nice little buff to combat core. I still don't think it's crazy, but this is very nice for that build. Rex is now up to gold. This guy's getting ping-ponged all over the place. We use another friend or relic. This gains damage for the fight. Same damage as before. Fix the bug where Rex would gain damage when he used another dinosaur. Okay, well, it's I mean, he was already like meh before, and now he's the same item, but he starts at gold. I think they need to speed him up to make him more viable at gold if they're gonna do this. I don't think he's gonna be great, unfortunately. My poor Rex, he is not great, but is what it is. I think he needs a little bit of a buff personally. All right, scrap metal quest. Sell 10 tool or tech items. When you sell this, reduce your leftmost item's cooldown by 369. When you sell this, upgrade your leftmost item of a lower tier. So this is actually a really cool one. So scrap used to only upgrade the core, and it could lower the cooldown on the core, but now it is instead a quest item. This part is not part of the quest, as far as I know, whereas this upgrade part is. So if you're able to complete your quest, you can use this to upgrade any item. So this makes cross-class items way easier to upgrade on Dooley, which is quite a fun change. I really like that. And it also makes it so you can get duplicates a lot easier on Dooley, assuming you can complete this quest. We are poor little robots, so it can be kind of hard to complete. But it gives Dooley more access to duplicates and upgraded cross-class items. It's a fun change. I'd love to see where this goes. I'm a little bit sad to lose our previous scrap, but I do like this change for sure. And at worst, it's just like a little... it's a more expensive, like, feather, basically. So, or not feather, insect wing. So, at worst, you can just buy it, sell it for some cooldown reduction, and it's still pretty solid. Solar Farm, change to gold, lower cooldown, less haste, more regen. I think for this to be good, you're probably going to want to slap rocket boots on it, because 1 second of haste is not great on Solar Farm. At least historically it wasn't. It does go up faster, but I think if you're able to get rocket boots on this, it'll be totally fine. If you're stuck with 1 second, not so much. Soldering gun starts at bronze, totally fine. It's a nice little item. If you can hit the requirements, I think it'll be good early on. It does kind of really want some burn buffing, so it's not as great outside of like Ignition Core, but I still think it's fine early on. It's a fast little item, technically, like activations per second anyway. Anki's been slapped into gold tier, and he's up to 200 damage from 50. I still think he's not going to get used that much. He was used like sometimes in dino builds, but most of like the really good dino builds were just stacking a ton of damage on Dinosaur. So I think Anki, he kind of needs like his own niche now. He's still pretty solid, but the shielding isn't as impactful late game if you've already had your dinos scaled up. And finding him at gold means you can't even scale him as easily. So I don't think he's going to be great, but he's at least like okay shielding if you find him early, mid-ish, I guess. I don't think he's great, though. Temporal Navigator, if this is your only tech item, its cooldown is halved from 3 seconds. It's an interesting change again. I assume it's because you used to be able to like crude tools it and then you could get it down to like 1 second. So it's trying to keep it from getting out of hand. This does mean that you can once again stack cooldown reduction on this because it has by default 50. And then you can stack more cooldown reduction on it, which would give you like it's got it's got additive CDR. So that's something to be aware of. You might be able to actually make this better than before if you've got a bunch of cooldown reduction access, but we shall see. We shall see. I don't think this is crazy on board or anything. It was mainly used for things like Dualtron or maybe some dinos, stuff like that. The core actually does a little bit of damage now. Not too bad. It's a nice little buff. This thing still probably really wants scaling though, so it's nice buff. I think it's reasonably strong still, but you just got to be careful about how you build it because it does really need like something else to make it pop off for sure. It doesn't scale on its own. Thrusters, this is in addition to its existing effects, so it's just a straight buff to thrusters that makes something fly. Very nice. You can use it like with your core or one of your important items to give it flying, so it's more resistant to freeze, etc. Very nice. I like it. Uzi renamed to SMG. In case you weren't aware, Uzi is like a kind of a brand or like a type of gun. So it'd be like if you named like the rifle, like Vanessa's rifle, like the Winchester or something. It's kind of copyright adjacent, I guess. So they just renamed it to the generic SMG. I'm probably still gonna call it Uzi just by instinct for like the rest of time, but you know, is what it is. Welding Torch, this one's really fun. So it's been redesigned, starts at silver, and it has plus burn equal to 10% of your shield. So this could go pretty hard. So this is now like true shield plus burn synergy. So you can run it with like an armored core as another payoff, or you can run it as you can run it in burn core still if you really want to, because it can, you know, generate buffs or can even do a little bit of burn. It's not like horrible cooldown early on. So yeah, very fun item. I love to see more armored core payoffs to make them more viable long term. Also, I've already been talking for an hour, so I think we're going to skip the other character items for the time being. I'm not an expert on them anyway. I'll kind of go through like the important ones. We'll skim them, but I'm not going to go in depth into all of them because my voice is already running out and I do want to stream tonight. Let's see. Skim. Might just cut this part out. Oh, lighter, back to 3 seconds. Very funny. Oh, lighthouse is a kind of an interesting one. So they changed it from like the charge to like when you slow burn. So this could potentially end up making loops. I don't know if there's any like when you burn items on Vanessa, but if you get something from another class, like when you burn, like you could use pyrocarbon, for example. If you got like a heavy pyrocarbon with lighthouse, I think it would just infinitely loop. So like this has the potential to create infinite loops. They've made a few of these, so they got to be careful with these, but I think they're interesting at the very least. Eels went to gold. Every dooley rejoices. Where's rifle? Rifle seemed interesting. So rifle now does quite a lot more damage, and it also scales its own damage, but it doesn't reload itself. So if you're able to find a way to reload rifle, it's going to pop off quite a bit. They're also speeding up some of the fast items like revolvers to 3 seconds, and it no longer crits itself, but it no longer reloads itself either. Interesting. It's just kind of I guess it's just an ammo fang now. That's an odd one. Is this repeater? Yeah, okay, repeater's another crazy one. When you use another ammo item, use this. So it does have ammo of its own, so it doesn't go completely insane, but this does seem like it'll be quite powerful in ammo builds on Vanessa. Powder keg is now gold. Still the same item, essentially, though. Anything else? Oh, shot glass is now 3 seconds. Kind of crazy, but it only does haste and slow 3 instead of all, which I guess is fair. We definitely have the slow trigger spam definitely needs to get a little bit slowed down on a lot of classes, including Dooley. So I think this is a fine change. I think they should do that more overall because like slow all items, haste all items just goes kind of insane. Yeah. Oh, Slumbering Primordial also got hit by the drill nerf. So you gotta be careful about that, but he got a little bit of a buff to compensate. Anything else? Oh, throwing knives got set back to its old one, which is when you use another item, or when you crit with another item, use this. So again, Ammonessa seems like it might be pretty viable. It's got a lot of like instant things triggering each other. This patch might kind of go crazy with like Charge-mageddon type thing instantly triggering something else, but I'm hoping that they managed it well enough that it won't completely ruin things like it did last time. Right. I don't know enough about Nessa to really comment on the rest, but it seems like she generally got a decent amount of buffs. I don't see too many nerfs in my quick scroll there. Pig got a ton. 28-hour fitness, now at gold. It didn't get changed, so it's still pretty much the same build as it was before. It's just less likely to get it as consistently as before. At Lull is pretty much unchanged, just need more damage to actually get it to 1 second. Bees are now at gold. Beast burns to gold. What else? Cold room's at gold. Dog is pretty fun. I like this one a lot. So he's been completely redesigned. You feed him a bunch of food, and then he gets like extra damage multicast, and his cooldown goes down. So at Diamond, he'll be like 4-second cooldown that does 300 times 2 damage, which is pretty nuts. So he'll be pretty crazy if you can pay out, but that's like a lot of food you gotta sell. But they did make Gumballs food, so that makes him a little bit easier to feed, but it's a cool item. I like him, even if I'll never play with him myself. I think he's cool. Looks like Kukri got... Oh, did it get nerfed? It no longer works with regen, interestingly. But its cooldown went down. I guess it's still not very good. Regal Blade got redesigned, so now it's a quest-based item instead of just being like an infinite scaling item. Showcase got nerfed a bit. Robe got nerfed a bit. Silk got redesigned, so it's a quest item as well. So they've removed a lot of pigs like infinite scaling. If you get this early and scale it forever, it goes insane type stuff. So you can't just like get your silk to 2,000 and then blow somebody up with like the shield or the crab claw anymore. But I think it's kind of interesting. So it just gets a bunch of flat shield when you sell all these small multicast and lower cooldown. So it's like dog but with shield instead. Skyscraper starts at gold, so it's like that big one that you always get deleted by if you see it. So this could be one to watch if Value Pig is back on the menu. So we might be seeing that more often. Sponsored Apparel got reworked a little bit. It looks like it still does something very similar to what it did before, but it's shield equal to value. We'll see. I think it still might be quite strong, but we'll see. And then the most important one, Yo-Yo starts at gold tier. So we'll no longer see quite as many like drum and 28-hour fitness pigs with just like a billion yo-yos, things like that. So some welcome changes as a non-pig player. Mac, again, I don't know too much about this, but a lot of his like payoff items moved to gold tier. Seems to be the case. Apologies for going through this insanely fast. My voice is just kind of dying, and we've already been talking for an hour. Magic Carpet now gets flying when you crit in addition to the cooldown reduction, so that's what I was talking about a little bit earlier. Pendulum now starts at Diamond. This is a pretty big change, and you can no longer get him from whatever that guy's name is, that one fight. He's no longer in there, so expect to see a lot fewer pendulums in like random people's build, which is very welcome because this item is absolutely insane. It's nice that Max still has access to it, but yeah, it was definitely a crazy item. Anything else? Sands of Time got nerfed a little bit. Yeah, okay. Sands of Time got nerfed quite a lot because it's now, this item's cooldown reduced by 1 second and it no longer charges from adjacent relics. Kind of deserved. This item was absolutely all over the place, but I'm sure Max will be a little bit sad about the loss of that guy. Vat of Acid is now at gold, but it got a little buff. Vial Launcher's gold, which is nice because we'll no longer see that quite as much. Yeah, there is just mostly similar to what the other characters got. A lot of like the payoff items moved to gold and then some slight buffs to them to compensate for it. Even Fireclaw got moved to gold. Right. Common items. So this is, they got like kind of the same treatment that Silk Scarf got. So it's immunity to freeze instead of like removing it. Crusher Claw now actually buffs shield items a reasonable amount. That's fair. It kind of sucked before for that part. I assume it still has the other effect. Cosmic Amulet. This is from the Cosmic Rock. Hasten item. When you crit, the star's flying. While this is flying, it has multicast. It's not a bad item. If you're running like a crit build and need some haste, I can see this actually being viable to use now. It used to kind of suck. Cosmic Plumage. An item starts flying and your flying items gain crit chance. When you use a crit or flying item, charge this. This is a bit of a nerf from... It's actually quite a nerf from what it used to be for crit core on dooley specifically. But it's useful in like other contexts now, but it is a little sad to lose this guy for crit core, unfortunately. Darkstone Engine got... Oh, okay, I was gonna say I thought it got buffed, but no, it got nerfed, which is fair. It was very strong, actually. I've used it a decent amount lately, and like you could get it to like 5x multicast. It would go off at like 4 or 5 seconds and just blow people up. So kind of deserved, honestly. Dragonheart now charges when you use a flying item. So this is that big dragon legendary that's like doubles the burn on one of your items. This could be a lot more viable now because It used to be only when you burn with an item, but now it's when you use a flying item as well. So you could use like a bunch of flying items and one burn item, which lets you much more easily focus the Dragon Heart's multiplication onto that burn item. So this is a pretty big buff to this, but it's also a legendary item. So I'd love to see what people are able to cook up with this thing. It seems really fun now. Dragon Whelp can fly. Very cute. Nice flavor. Dragon Wing also flies. Again, cute. Nice flavor. Frozen Bludgeon is actually no longer 13 seconds. It was horrible before, so at least it's actually like somewhat viable to put on your board, maybe. And it still does have like it's slightly buffed. It's got like a mini shatter effect. I don't think it'll be good, but the 9-second cooldown at least makes it okay to use if you have to take it from Curio early or something. And then Harkuvian Launcher is now like, it's like a big fang with ammo, which, I mean, it could be good if you get it early on. It's kind of fun. But the ammo is hard to solve on like dooley, but it could be fun to use on something like Vanessa. Bonk. I think this one's being changed. We'll have to see, but it's all items with a cooldown of 6 or less have their cooldowns increased by 1 second. So it's only small items get bonked and not large ones, or well, not long cooldown ones. However, I do think I think I heard in the Discord that they might have to rework this one because there's some issues with it. We'll have to see. So don't take that one too seriously. Cosmic Wind. This was the Cosmic Rocks effect. So it's now when you haste, a weapon gains damage for the fight. So this is basically how like old Motherboard worked on dooley. So that's pretty fun. It's nice that we have that effect back in existence. I can see it's being pretty fun. I like the old one quite a lot, but the new one is also quite good. So it's now a nice payoff for going to the rock. Flashy Pilot, when you use a vehicle, your item. I've heard this is an incorrect tooltip, and it's actually been nerfed more than this. I suspect it would be because Stell has like a ton of vehicles. Dooley's got quite a few ways to spam vehicles now, so I do think this skill will have been nerfed more than it says it is here, but it's still pretty strong. I think it's definitely still good. It just gives you a bunch of free crit, so we'll see. Flashy Reload no longer gives you infinite clock. Very sad. It's only the first 3-6 times you crit. I believe they had to do this so because of the new Vanessa thing specifically, where it's like when you crit, use this, you can't make an infinite throwing knife combo anymore. Very fair. Those things were disgusting, so deserved nerf if they're going to use that design for throwing knives. Focus Rage, when you fall below half health, your items gain 50% crit chance for the fight. That's quite nice. It used to be kind of hard to use because, like, doubling crit chance, you'd need it to be, like, hovering around 50 to really be usable, which was But plus 50% is quite nice because now you can use it even if you have no crit. It gives you half, like, 50%, half crit half the time when you reach half health. So a very nice upgrade for a skill probably no one ever used. New max skill. If you have only one potion, its cooldown is halved and has +1 max ammo. This one could be good for, like, VAT. You could have, like, one potion on the board, which is your VAT, and it has cooldown halved. I can see this being extremely powerful. I don't know enough about Mac, again, to really, like, make a huge judgment, but cooldown is halved is a very strong keyword here, so I think this could be quite strong. Trained now increases the damage of one weapon from all weapons. Very much deserved. So this was the skill from the little bug guy on day 1, which used to be, like, when you slow, buff all of your items damage by, like, 5 damage, I think, whenever you slow. And now it's only one weapon, which is fair because it was pretty dominant in the meta because you could just run like Plasminade or Shot Glasses or whatever and buff your entire board by like 1 trillion. And now it's only one weapon, which makes it much less disgusting. Truffleholic, when you sell a medium or large, get 1 of your truffles. If Value Pig is a thing again, this is quite good, I would say. In my non-pig player opinion, this seems quite powerful, but if Value Pig isn't a thing, it's meh. Vital Renewal, this was that crazy Mac one, and it now starts at gold. Very much deserved. It was insane. And then the most important changes of all, of course, Blast Doors now has visual effects. So there we go. I apologize for skimming through the other characters, but my voice is dying, and you can look through them yourself, as I'm sure that if you play those characters, you'll have a much more nuanced opinion than I do, because I don't personally play them. Yeah, hopefully you all enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Oh, also, if you're watching this on the day of the patch, I will be streaming a little bit later tonight whenever the patch officially drops. So hope to see you there.